This episode of the WP Minute is brought to you by OmniSend. Do you sell stuff online? Then you need to meet OmniSend, the powerful yet refreshingly intuitive email and SMS tool that helps you make $73 for every dollar spent. OmniSend is that good and effective. You probably know the struggles of investing in digital ads with no guarantee it'll bring money back into your pocket. Use OmniSend and you won't have to find creative ways to make your audience notice you. You just talk straight to them. Use OmniSend pop-ups to build a contact list, then send campaigns directly to people who already want to hear from you. Automate everything with OmniSend. Just set it up once, sit back, and watch those sales roll in. If this sounds too good to be true, check it out at omnisend.com. Visit omnisend.com. Tell them thanks for sponsoring the WP Minute. Mark Szymanski back for another WP Minute.
Matt Medeiros, it's always a pleasure, buddy.
I've been calling you my co-host as I go about different podcasts and stuff like that. I hope you don't mind.
I'm fine with it. I'm excited to be here.
I'm not paying you. I'm just calling you.
Yeah, we're working on that in the back end. It's fine.
We're working on that in the back end. We already recorded this similar topic, and as I tell you often, we're skating to where the puck is headed. And the fine folks at WP Product Talk actually really took it a step further. This subject of is WordPress on the decline? Looking at stats. This is stuff that Noel Talk and Yoast have been presenting and talking about for many years, of course. But of course, over the last year, Noel's talk at WordCamp EU, I believe it was, or over this past year, not last year, but this past year when he did that presentation in Europe, that really caused some ripples across the WordPress lake. They did a great job. I'll link that up in the show notes. I already did a blog post recapping that episode on the WP Minute. But Mark and I largely talked about the same thing, looking at Google Trends and asking ourselves, is WordPress on the decline? We're going to talk about it again for a little bit, but I also want to talk about two other things. One, I'm going to play this clip from Josefa from WordCamp US 2023, which is almost, or probably today, like a year old. From when they did the State of the Word last year, or the State of the Word update, or whatever the heck they call it at the end of WordCamps. And we'll play that clip because I think it's important to understand all of this stuff. We are always operating in sort of a lag state where Josefa and Matt and maybe other folks in the leadership council are talking about things and making decisions that are impacting us throughout the rest of the year. Let me just play this clip. It'll start to make more sense. I'm picking up deep into her talk at the future of WordPress, but here we go.
You're trying to figure out how to get involved with WordPress. I've got a simple first thing. One, use the software. So you're already doing it probably, right? That's the easiest way of joining into the WordPress project to make sure that we continue to thrive into the future. Because we exist for as long as people want to use our software.
That little moment right there, that we exist for as long as people want to use our software, and the rest of this talk, at least in my opinion, and I also wrote a summary about this presentation, is Josefa was really hitting on the fact that WordPress needs humans now. Like, I took that, when I listened to that entire talk, and I know this was just a little blip in that radar talk, so if you've never heard it before, listen to the whole thing. But what she's encouraging for WordPress to thrive is for more people to be excited about it, to educate, to promote it, and to market it. Which again is a callback to what today's episode is about. In that moment, 1 year ago, which was probably realized a year before that talk was created, WordPress is we're in that plateau right now. Like, let's all just come to reality. Some people are alarmists and saying it's gonna, the bottom is gonna fall out, that we're looking at numbers and it is going down, but it's not really going down that much. I think everyone realized that, yeah, we're going to hit a plateau. We're 20 years in. Yeah, we haven't innovated as fast as we wanted to. It's not as sexy as the next competitor. It is kind of old and lethargic. But in order to keep going, we know we're not going to get those features in fast enough to all of a sudden this thing's going to start going up and to the right again. So, oh, by the way, we need people now. Like, WordPress needs people. And that was a little reflection, in my opinion, of leadership saying, we need to start working with our community a little bit better. So as much as we criticize them about maybe the lack of communication and the lack of working with the community, in my opinion, that talk is what we're seeing now, or helped bring us to where we are now with Ann McCarthy, Rich Tabor, even Jamie Marsland joining head of WordPress YouTube. We're starting to see those dominoes fall from that talk, in my opinion. Leadership has said, we need the humans again, right? You're feeling a little bit appreciated. You're feeling a lot more appreciated these days as a content creator. You know, a decade after I've been in this game, where I felt so underappreciated, it wasn't even funny. So I think what we're starting to see are those cards play out. Josefa and team realizing a year ago, and probably many months or a year before that, going, oh God, we got to make a plan to reconnect with this community, because that's how WordPress is going to grow over the next couple of years. It's not going to be a Gutenberg block or a feature that we throw in. We got to get people on board with the messaging. You could argue, like I do, 10 years too late or right on time. I don't know. It depends on how optimistic you are. But that was my opinion. I wanted to play that from Josefa because I look to those talks from Josefa and Matt Mullenweg's State of the Words as the milestones to the year ahead. So when you start pounding on the table, why this, why that, why not them, why not us? I like to go back a year ago and say, look at these milestone presentations from leadership and what can you reverse engineer from that in your moment of time. That's how I look at this stuff. Your thoughts, meaty subject, but do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, you made a couple points there. Yeah, there was a lot there. I mean, with that little blurb specifically, I would be really interested to see if that's actually what was meant by that, if there was anything kind of behind that, or if it's just kind of like, again, kind of connecting dots that may or may not be there. But again, I mean, you know, reality and what's going on. Again, I got to tip my hat all the time to Ann McCarthy, Rich Tabor, all the people that are doing interviews, even Matt Mullenweg, obviously doing interviews. Like, again, I always say this, but like I'm newer here, right? And I would say the one really cool thing about this whole space of WordPress is just how seemingly, not all, I wouldn't say like extremely easily, but how seemingly accessible everyone is. Even like, you know, somebody like Matt Mullenweg, right? Like, I mean, I know you've interviewed him, the Product Talk interviewed him recently. I'm sure if I reached out to him, he would at least consider it. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it's really cool because you can't do that elsewhere. I don't think that it's as easy in other places. So
can't call up Tim Apple and be like, hey man, get on the phone.
Yeah, seriously. And so I think that's really cool, really, really awesome. At the same time, like the question that I would have to you, trying to put the puzzle pieces together in my head, would be, we're talking, if you use this last year as like maybe a signal that we're trying to get back into like the community and like at least leverage more of the great minds in the community and like the opinions and all that sort of stuff, which that's a deeper conversation, but assuming that is partially the case, right? Partially the methodology. What happened when I wasn't here, so to speak, and when other people weren't here, like beforehand? Like, was it really community centric and then it fell off because it got really big really fast, and then it kind of is coming back now because we realize we need that? You mentioned it in kind of like the opening monologue, so to speak, there. Like, what was the condensed version of all that? Did that kind of get lost at some point? And I want to a caveat real quick though, because this whole sense of community, there is absolutely a WordPress community. But as you've literally said before, it doesn't actually mean anything in one aspect of it's open source software. Like like when we first started having these conversations, I was like, why don't they just do this, this, and this? Or why don't they listen to us? And they're like, that's not how it works. So this sense of, I feel like there's a lot of language thing. I was talking about this on my live stream yesterday. The language in this space though is extremely confusing. So that's kind of where I'm at. I know I threw a lot back at you there, but
yeah. Yeah, so for sure, this is just a little blip on the radar, that little snippet. The way that I digested her presentation was they need people for WordPress to thrive. Like everyone needs to get on board in some form or fashion. And if you continue that clip from where I left it off, she starts talking about like learning WordPress and earlier in the presentation, also talking about how WordPress can literally change lives. And I also agree with that because it changed my life and it changed so many other lives that I know from either people starting services, business, product business, etc. We're all able to thrive personally when WordPress is doing well. And I think that was her sort of message to everyone. What was the community like before this? I think we're in that unique, interesting time where there was never this feeling that we have in WordPress. While some of the arguments are the same, we might be at a different sort of velocity, or our footprint is a lot bigger. So, for example, when folks like KG and all these other folks are railing against why leadership doesn't pay attention to the website builders that are out there. Why aren't they listening to us? We're the ones making 100 sites, 1,000 sites for clients. Like, we're in the weeds building this thing, make this software better for us. This was the same argument that I had 10 years ago with Mullenweg when Mullenweg was shipping Jetpack as the way that WordPress is going to grow, right? And I was like, wait a minute. how are you saying Jetpack has grown, or how are you tying together WordPress's growth because of Jetpack, which was something that he said at a Pressnomics, which is what led me to my first interview with him talking about that. I didn't pull any clips from that episode, but I will in the future. And there's the same kind of strife. It's just it's different sizes now. Then it was just Jetpack, and now it's like you're looking at all of WordPress going, why haven't you made WordPress better for us instead of this little plugin? We've had these struggles for a while. I think what's interesting now is that because the software has gotten better over the last, let's call it 10 years, and the introduction of other page building tools, name all of them are responsible. Beaver Builder, Divi, Elementor, Bricks, every page builder, Visual Composer has brought in a whole new breed of customers and users into WordPress over the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years. And now that customer, or I keep saying customer, but now that user is going, hey, when is this thing getting better? I got into this game 5, 8, 10 years ago, and I was able to use these plugins, but now I really don't see anything changing too dramatically over the course of this 5 to 8 to 10 years. Like, why isn't it getting better? And we have now a much more, we have more of those folks than the previous 10 years, which were just hardcore geeks and developers who were touching WordPress and just having those conversations off to the side, either literally building WordPress or didn't give a shit about, workflows and easy to use software because they were like, man, I'm cracking open my code editor and I'm building these themes and plugins. That's what I do. I don't care about page builders. I mean, I've said this to you before on the show before. Back then, everybody, if you use a page builder, you were getting that same sort of like animosity that maybe Bricks users give to Elementor people today, right? Like when a Bricks user goes, oh my God, you're using Elementor, foolish, right? Like, I can't believe you still use that. I'm on this Bricks thing, which is way better. Back then, if the biggest crowd, the biggest audience here were developers, still are largely, but back then it was just pure developers. And if you brought a page builder into the game, they were looking at you going, get out of here with that thing. Now, again, a decade later, people are like, okay, I guess these things are here to stay. I mean, we have Gutenberg, and now we have Elementor as a massive company in the WordPress space. People are like, okay, I guess these things are staying. So now there's a group of people a lot larger and a lot more vocal, than the geeky developer who just, I don't care about anything else. I'm just going to write this code and optimize it myself. And we're in this, hitting this crossroads now that WordPress has never seen. The power user who knows how to use this stuff and knows how to sell it is like, give me better, give me faster, and give it to me now because we're dying out here compared to the competitors, Webflow, Wix, whatever, which I don't fully buy, but that's the sentiment. And I don't think WordPress has ever seen this before. And that's why it's very important, I think, for WordPress. And this is why you see a concerted effort from Automattic, whether you agree with it or not, to really dig their heels into the community. Again, you could say 10 years too late, but also they got to do it. And I'm glad that they're doing it. So I just sort of keep them at an arm's length is kind of a harsh statement, but okay, what do you want? How do you want to do this thing? I've been saying it for years. KG's been saying it for a couple years, and it's like, give it to us and let's work through this and see if we can get there.
So are you saying that they've never really tried to do it like this then, to your
Oh God, no.
understanding?
This is like if you were to so we're going to talk about the marketing stuff. And again, I'll implore people to go and watch the WP Product Talk presentation, because marketing came up a lot. Like, how are we going to make WordPress better? We need, better marketing. And does that marketing come from Automattic, or does it come from a consortium of brands, in the space? I have a real life story about, ad consortiums and brand consortiums that's not too good. I'll save it for the end here, but certainly WordPress, or you have to be careful. Certainly Automattic has not reached out to work with content creators like this before, right? Even though I feel like Anne's just on her own side quest and it's not an official thing. It's as official as it gets, and that's good. We saw the failures of the official WordPress Make marketing team, right? Couldn't do anything. In Ray's post today on the on the repository, she said, she quoted some of Yost's pain points from when he was the marketing lead for like 9 months or 11 months, whatever it was, 3 months. I don't know what it was, but he was like, I can't do anything. Like, here's a guy who not only runs the most popular SEO plugin ever, knows SEO and marketing like the back of his hand, is a prominent figurehead in the WordPress community. He stepped in and he was like, nope, can't do it. Right? Because he looked at it and goes, any marketing person who knows marketing and needs access to resources cannot do this job in a volunteer environment. So the marketing team has failed and frozen, not from the end users, not from their perspectives, but just from the fact that they don't have the access, the data, or the power to really shape a marketing message for open source WordPress, right? My biggest arguments against the Jamie Marsland gig that happened. So very difficult. You have Media Core, also headed by an Automattic lead. I think Reyes is doing a phenomenal job, but it's still an Automattic lead doing a Media Core, trying to build out a Media Core experiment. I think it's going fairly good in the first couple of months. It is exactly what I had expected it to be, a more professional, organized way to say, here's the things coming out of WordPress. Do you all want to cover this content? Cool, thumbs up. I think it's good, but we all have to remember this isn't Automattic is the one leading the charge of what's happening out of that group. And us as media guys and gals choose to cover it or not, right? It's up to us. And then you have the Tavern, which is owned by Audrey Capital, Matt's company. So you have a lot of these places that are going to help market and push WordPress, yes, but also controlled by Automattic at the same time. And you take that with your grain of salt, however big that is. But that's a long way of getting to, no, Automattic has never really pushed into the creator space for messaging like this. Always have supported community, but more so on like the, hey, help us build WordPress thing, not the help us get this message out about WordPress.
Do you think there's a reason for that? Do you think like they were just, for lack of a better way to explain it, just like busy before and just didn't think that it was necessary? And now they see all like the sharks in the water, so to speak. Again, it's a little bit hyperbolic, but like they see like how big of a deal influencer marketing, so to speak, is in creator-based marketing. And now we're like, we should probably consider. Do you think that that's the problem that I have with these conversations? Is they're all really good, but like we talked about off camera, like you don't want to create like just an echo chamber of just like random speculation and random ideas. So like, I just feel like I need to do a better job of this, but like, I feel like we have the access to the people that I assume are taking actual, like, there's definitely rooms that people are making decisions in, and like those ideas are, potentially flowing down, but obviously we have the other situations like we talked to Anne, and that's fantastic. The YouTuber program is fantastic. Apparently that's not like a top down thing. That's more of just like, again, like you said, kind of a side quest, and cool. That's awesome that freedom exists. But I feel like in some of the bigger things, the bigger messaging pieces, the bigger plays, Automattic is a for-profit corporation, right? And WordPress is a big part of what they do, .org and .com and all that. So like, I feel like these things that we're talking about, they have answers. Somebody has answers to this, you know what I mean? So I feel like that's part of the thing that, when I ask these types of questions, it's like, how did these things come to be? And we're just kind of like putting trying to put the dots, connect the dots sometimes. So
Yeah.
it's a little tough. I don't know. I don't exactly know where I was going with that.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Like, why do you think this is happening? Well, again, I'll just go back to what I said. I think it's because they've realized that we are hitting a plateau. So again, if the WP Product Talk presentation, Noel Talk and Yoast talk about their numbers and on either the slight decline in installs, the numbers can be measured in different ways. So obviously check out that episode if you want to see how it all came together. There's nothing we're not watching WordPress crashing, right? So there's that. So let's hold on a second. We're not crashing here, but I think they've realized that, yeah, we're going to hit a plateau. I mean, at some point, like, you're not going to keep having that velocity of growth, right? Because, technology is going to get better faster, and competitors are going to come into the market like they have, and it's going to just slow down the way that WordPress continues to grab that market share. So I think that the reason is they've identified that we're going to be hitting a plateau season for however long that is, a couple of years. And now it's time to look outward from just like the folks who build and write lines of code for WordPress to the folks who are marketing and possibly implementing, WordPress for their clients. And I totally agree with you. It would be great to get people with direct answers on the line and ask them. I do think that 90% of this, all roads lead back to Matt, and to have Matt on every call would be near impossible. So I can only operate off of these like key presentations, especially from Josepha, right? Executive Director of WordPress. So I have to look at these presentations as this is what you're telling us, right? This is your update. One of the benefits to the Media Core is that Josepha will be in the next Media Core meeting for us media folks, which is fantastic, because now this could help bridge that gap of, look, we need to talk to people. We need to ask these questions, done in a professional manner, with that caveat. Because a lot of people especially in the Twitter sphere, is just like, well, ask them why we don't have this block, or why can't I drag this over there and import that? It's like, well, this is not for that. This is for the health of overall WordPress and where this whole thing is going. You can take your feature concerns at another time. So yeah, maybe these efforts will help us get there. I wanted to play this clip before we start talking about the marketing side of it, because I think it sets the tone of what we're all feeling right now. That's the way that I perceive this talk. I've watched it a couple times. August 31st, 2023. So literally 1 year old tomorrow is when she gave this presentation. So I think we're right on track. And if you continue listening to this, she starts talking about the learn efforts. And we just saw, a couple weeks ago, the redesign of the Learn site and the efforts that they're putting into the Learn site. So this is exactly the proof in my pudding, is to hear her talk about this stuff and literally see it, 6 months, or actually 8 months in the future, finally coming. What am I saying? 8 months, a year into the future, finally the Learn site has improved, which is one of the things that she talked about. Like, we have to get learning better and easier and more accessible. So I look to these moments, the Matt Mullenweg State of the Words, and whenever she does her, I don't know what they're called, but her capstone events at WordCamp US, I look at those as, that's the signal. That's the direction. I'd love to have them on every call, but I just have to use what I have in front of me.
Certainly. So to kind of summarize this obviously from your perspective, and I know I'm sure we've talked about this, but I don't know if I've directly asked it like this. What is your in late August of 2024, based on everything that we've seen here? What is your current perspective on like I don't want to, there's probably multiple ways to say it, but like the health of WordPress, the WordPress.org, like the open source software, the health of it, the current position of it, and more so than the current position, like where do you see it? Where do you see it like in the past 3 years versus the next 3 years or something like that? You know what I mean? Like what's your gauge on this now? Because I feel like even since we've started talking, it's possibly changed slightly. Not heavily, but I feel like more conversations have been had, more things have been said,
Yeah.
So where are you at right now?
I'm much more optimistic on the software side of things, and I guess, and the community side of things. It is. I'm much more optimistic on both the software and the community than I was 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I was like, oh boy, like there was, but also like the economy, was also weird for agencies. Like a lot of agencies 3 years ago were like, what's happening? We really got to tighten this belt. Now, during COVID, everybody was like, I'm printing money.
Yeah.
And this is
Probably a bad
amazing.
example, but yeah.
Right. But coming out of that, people are like, where the hell did that all go? And I think it was Noel that brought this up in the presentation, but when you look at the swings in the economy, a lot of people, this is why I always say, like, this is why WordPress's strongest advantage. I know it's easy to throw out that strong advantage of, oh, it's just open source, but in a top-down approach, there are massive organizations that go, yeah, we're done paying Adobe for their CMS $10 million a year in licensing, and we're going to shift over to an open source model, and that's an investment for a long term. So when that glacier moves over of some massive organization that says, okay, now we're gonna skip this Microsoft SharePoint or Adobe CMS, I forget what theirs is called, and the Oracle's stuff, like whatever big corporate entity that they're paying millions and millions of dollars for, never mind the salaries and support licenses that they have to pay for, and they invest in a WordPress or any open source, but they invest in a WordPress. That's not just, they're not going to change out of that decision a year from now. They go, okay, well, WordPress didn't work. No. Yeah. Like those organizations don't move that way. So if you can get somebody in like that, that's an investment in WordPress, open source WordPress for 5 to 10 years, because that's just how those corporations move. And they're investing so much time and money into these things. So the economy can play a big role in adoption. It's easy to say WordPress is free. And while it's not free at that scale, it is magnitudes less expensive than a Microsoft SharePoint and an Adobe. So all of that is to say is, I think we're in a better place. 3 years, I feel it. With all the noise that I hear, I don't see anyone actually leaving. When Gutenberg launched, I saw people leaving, right? Like a year into it, people are like, I'm out. Like that's when I saw other people looking at other no-code solutions, Statamic, people, developers that were building plugins for WordPress going, you know what? I don't even want to sell plugins anymore for this space. I want to just go after this other stuff. And I saw people leaving. I don't see people leaving here.
So yes, I don't see too many people leaving either. I mean, I don't have my finger on the pulse of the data, which, as a side note, it would be amazing if we get even better data. I know WordPress.org or Automattic or somebody has like decent data that we potentially looked at before, or I've seen it on other stuff and things like that. Maybe it was the YouTuber call or whatever, but that would be amazing if we could like do more surveys or something to get like a broader mass. I know we're just dealing with a ton of information though, so that's tough. But what was I going to say? The thing that you're saying though is, I know we're not pulling up the charts like we did in our
I'm building one. I'm building one right now so we can so we can pull it up, because I knew you were going to go there.
But like that's what I'm kind of thinking is, if you look at the last 3 years, the next 3 years, obviously you can't predict the future, but like even the trends over the last you extrapolate back like 5 or 10 years, if you go back, those charts we looked at, like comparatively, just like Google Trends to the other platforms, it makes sense that WordPress is kind of plateauing because there's more options now and things like that. But I feel like there's a subtle conversation nuance to be had where, yeah, I don't see a lot of people leaving WordPress, but I don't actually even hear that argument that much. I hear people not coming to WordPress because the other stuff's either easier to get into, or is just like marketed better. Like, I feel like I personally, from what I've seen, I don't think there's a exodus problem. I think there's a, what's the word? Awareness, or there's a better word for it. Escaping me right now, but like not even a searchability, just like I don't know. It'll come to me, but like finding it, like almost
Right.
finding WordPress and realizing that it is ultimately one of the best solutions. I did like, though, I'll say this and I'll let you go over the chart. Mark's live stream, I don't know when this is going out, but like, pronounce his last name for me that you just did.
Oh, Benzakein.
Yeah. Mark Benzakein's presentation, there was a specific line, and the whole thing was great, but the specific line in there where it was like, don't like realize that there are competitors and they might be better for certain things. Like, I do actually like that approach. I mean, I personally probably would use WordPress for 99% of the things, but if something comes out that WordPress isn't specific for, or like you really need like an easy, super duper easy, like e-commerce thing, certainly there's WooCommerce, there's SureCart, but like in some cases, maybe Shopify is the thing. We got to be honest with ourselves as far as like actual requirements, because every project's different. So my point, though, in saying, but I think a lot of times WordPress could be the answer. And I think a lot of times people aren't getting to that step. So I think that's really where potentially, hopefully, Automattic is understanding that piece, because I don't see an exodus problem. I see like an entrance problem, like getting into it.
Yeah. Yeah. And hold that thought for like the marketing stuff. But when we look at so for those watching, we have the Google Trends, and I think Noel brought this up too, that I think his data, or at least one of those slides, was based off of this, and it's just the keyword of WordPress, which, I mean, it's telling, but it's not like that means that WordPress is interesting, or that somebody was actually searching for, give me a WordPress website. And same goes for all this other stuff like WordPress, Webflow, Wix. This is just the search term trend. From a 50,000 foot view, you could say that it's popularity, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this leads to a WordPress install, a Webflow install, a Wix install.
The problem with this experiment that, I ran the other day, I told you about, and then we did think that we're doing here. The problem is that when you think of a Webflow website, there's basically nothing else that you're going to search in order to find Webflow or Wix. With WordPress, it may be interesting to add like an Elementor or like a Divi to the comparison, and then you'd have to somehow do like a complicated math equation to try to figure out like, we got to take like at least a percentage of this into account. So I'm not saying, again, like this isn't like fully telling either, but it would be interesting to just see, like, to kind of start some of that data. And again, Elementor is pretty low, but it's incredible that Elementor alone, right, is the same as Webflow.
Yeah.
According to these. Yeah. So,
and Wix just destroys it, right? So if you go, if you go Squarespace, well, actually, you know what you can do? You can do Visual Composer.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah, but it's nice. I think the problem with Visual Composer is it's just in a theme, and most people don't even know. Let's go Squarespace.
Like, I'd be interested like Divi and Beaver Builder, but I still think Elementor is probably going to be the biggest.
Yeah.
In this. Oh wow. Okay.
And if we take these out, so if you're just listening, you're not seeing us modify these charts. Let me just remove Wix and Squarespace, so we can just see this battle.
Wow.
So
Webflow, this right here is a really interesting chart, actually, because this, what we're seeing here on the screen for you listeners, if we're just podcasting here, is Webflow, Elementor, and Divi search term comparisons in Google trending, and pretty much all similar, especially more recently. But that's like, those are two WordPress page builders versus like a whole platform in Webflow. So again, I said this the other day, I was live streaming. I was like, Webflow is like the second thing out of WordPress people's mouth which is fine. Like that's whatever. But I just find it so interesting because like it's the smallest one. Like they must just be hammering along the lines of the same people that would like be like WordPress tinkerers and like kind of agency type owners. I guess like Webflow is just not really for a DIYer at all. Like they probably haven't like gone that route too much.
No, yeah, definitely not. Definitely
Yeah.
not.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, when you look at, so this is just the 5-year chart, right? I think when we had pre-recorded this or previously recorded this, we were looking at like a 10-year chart or something like that. And WordPress was just massive, right? And dominant. And
Certainly.
it was literally following, my argument to the first 10 years of WordPress was, man, it was the only thing that was out there that people were able to build websites with.
Yeah.
Of course, launched blogs, which were very popular back then. It was the social media before social media. And people were just like, yeah, give me this thing. I need it. This is technology. This is the internet. I'm connecting with people. Give it to me. And then when you cross that 10-year path where you started to see the rise of Wix, Squarespace, Webflow, all these other, Shopify, more so than Webflow, of course, that was an indication of, 10 years in consumer internet has matured and a lot more competition. Prices went down for technology, servers, storage, bandwidth. Back then, everything else was way more expensive to operate. And then just an increase in competition and softwares that came out. And WordPress had to battle that. None of these other, like all these other platforms had the luxury of like looking at, the past decade of WordPress and building on it. I make this case all the time. It's like, if you're a new form builder, I work for Gravity Forms, and you're a new form builder, you come into the space and you get to build your form, build a builder plugin based off of like the last 14 years that Gravity Forms has been in business, right? And you don't have to worry about all of the backwards compatibility and all this stuff. WordPress, same thing. These platforms come out, they can look at WordPress and be like, well, we ain't doing that. And it's going to be a hosted solution because we're not giving it to every individual to download and do whatever they want with, which is something that I think is, vastly overlooked in this desire for WordPress to be better, is that you can still take this thing off the shelf, put it onto your computer and break it apart and look at it and do things. And it doesn't even have to be, building a website. You could just take it apart and learn and understand code from it and move on with your life. Like these are things that, you see people speed running video games with like an old like Atari stick, and you're like, wait, they're not even supposed to be using that. Well, yeah, guess what? I'm a human and I can do these crazy wild things to prove my point. WordPress has this flexibility and this opportunity that are unmatched across the board, in my opinion.
Well, I don't know if anybody that actually knows anything about WordPress would argue with that the last point there. I mean, obviously it has an incredible flexibility, robustness, versatility, whatever you want to call it, because that's why we're here. I think for the vast majority of people, that's why they're here, right? They're either, if you look at the big avatars, they're either like, a large enterprise, which I don't have direct experience with, but I've learned from guys like you, Brian Cords and stuff. Like they're large enterprise people that need like an open source solution, highly customized, highly curated. Makes perfect sense there. They're either DIYers that literally just heard that, potentially older DIYers too, seemingly. I gotta put that asterisk in there because it was probably something that they found probably, in that first 10-year mark, potentially. They heard about it. They've always tinkered with it. It's very interesting. It's a little bit of a generalization there, but they've also found that it was free, open source. I don't know how they necessarily got sold on that, but again, it's probably like a very cheap option too. And it's versatile, which is incredible. Or you have the people that have kind of outgrown maybe other tools. Maybe they went to Webflow or they went to Wix or Squarespace, and they're like, okay, well now I can't do X, Y, and Z. How do I add a store? How do I do this or whatever? And then maybe they find a YouTube video or something and it's like, okay, WordPress. But I mean, I don't know how deeply we want to go into this, but like, I really just think the question becomes like, there's a couple questions that just pop up from what you're saying there though. Is the first one is that obviously WordPress was first there and they had 10 golden years of being the only So, roughly 10 golden years of being the only one there, which is awesome. Well, it's like, this is extremely natural. I'm not a huge history buff. I'm sure we could find examples of times where like somebody innovates and they're there for a period of time. And then 6 other people come in, they learn from all the mistakes, they build a better product in a fraction of the time, better, subjectively, in a fraction of the time. Then ultimately where that ends up going, and I'm not saying this is WordPress, I'm just saying this has to be a historical trend where like over the next 10 years, 15, 20 years, the first one can't dig itself out from under that hole. And then it ends up going either by the wayside or just like way more of a plateau or way less of a player in the space. I guarantee you we can see that somewhere in history.
God, yeah. I mean, Apple and Microsoft, perfect examples,
Yeah. I mean,
New England Patriots.
This guy, big Tom Brady guy.
You can only win for so long, man. And then like people age out of success, and that's,
Exactly. So, I mean, the thought would be, what do you do there? I mean, because again, I feel like this is kind of like in that spot. So it's like, are you gonna, there's a phrase like adapt or die. I don't know if that perfectly applies here, but that's like one thing that kind of comes to mind. There's another thing where it's just like, maybe now the second half of WordPress potentially or whatever is more of just like a more mature phase where it's like, hey, you know what? Our original goal was just to be like a publishing platform. We still have that in our philosophy 20 years later, although over that time, the philosophy by the community and the third-party ecosystem has been extended incredibly. And we don't really align exactly with that, but we're not going to like say, no, you can't do that. So now it's like, we're just going to go back to our roots. I'm saying this possible option. Like, we're just going to go back to our roots because we're not like directly, we are kind of competing with people, but we're not kind of competing with these other ones. And like, we want more people on the platform, but we're also like not exactly, we're not exactly offering the same thing as like a Squarespace and a Wix. So we're just going to stick to what we know and what we pioneered as like the publishing piece. And we're going to do that. And we're going to let the third party people just take care of whatever they want. And if you need something other than blog and publishing features, ask someone else. That is kind of the vibe that I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to piece all this together. And it's actually not a terrible plan, assuming everyone still cares enough and assuming the world doesn't continue to spiral into this like complete lack of data protection, open source. Like I genuinely believe that. Like as a younger person, like I genuinely believe like way less people care about open source. I do, but I'm saying like you have all these young whippersnappers, right, that are just out here on their phones, like getting their data stolen all the time or whatever, wherever, and then they have all this other concern. And like if you asked a kid right now, how did they set up a website? I think honestly, they'd probably be like more like, oh, just go follow my Instagram rather than like follow my blog and stuff. And I mean, this might be cyclical. This might come back, the other way. I hope it does. I'm trying to kind of do that with some of the stuff I do, and I know you are. But I know there's a lot there, but that's kind of my new understanding of what we got going on here to an extent. I don't know if any of that resonates.
I think what good leaders will recognize is how to deal with either failure or downturn, or you're just not the number one pick. And everyone should be comfortable with losing. I am very comfortable with losing. In fact, I feel like I'm losing every single day, and it's what keeps me coming back. When you're at the top and like that first 10-year ride of WordPress, it's phenomenal. Like you can't even imagine what that's like. But when you say like, has this ever happened in history before? You look at any successful tech company that just like, wow, I can't believe how fast they're rising. Look at this. This is amazing. And then they crash and burn because there's this artificialness to it. And this is a rough statement, but it's like in the real leaders are made in the wartime, right? The real downturn stuff on how you are going to, keep the mission going, keep people, backing the cause, and generally like continue to build your thing to keep it going. We're in that time largely with WordPress and Automatic. This is why I feel like we're going to have like a real automatic reckoning pretty soon, where something has to, like, the Band-Aid is going to get ripped off, and it's going to be like, we're Automatic, we're here to make money with WordPress. WordPress, the best place to get it is wordpress.com and or Jetpack. And then, by the way, we have this open source thing. It's not said like that today. Today, it's just like Matt, community, Automatic, like we're all in the same room together. I think it's going to be much more of like 60% of WordPress is Automatic, 40% is the community in terms of the package and the presentation when it comes from wordpress.com and Automatic. Because they need to get serious in survival. Again, just my opinion. But I don't think people should just get comfortable with winning all the time. Do you have to win all the time? Do you have to have the commanding lead of all content management systems? My opinion is no. And when you're not finding that success is when you're learning those lessons and you constantly shift. When I started the WP Minute, everybody was joining the membership. I was like, boom, I solved WordPress news, community journalism. I got it. People were, sending me clips. They were writing, blog posts for me, and it died out. And I am constantly reevaluating and evolving the packaging and the presentation of the WP Minute. A standout WordPress product that is doing just that is Beaver Builder, right? Beaver Builder, still a successful company, still going strong, still profitable by all accounts. Like I don't see any downturn. Everyone, their prices are going up, so they're understanding that they have to stay sustainable, and they're not chasing the Elementor and the Divis and the bricks. They have a strong user base. How? Well, they got there early, number one, but they put out a great product and they listen to their customers. What the hell is wrong with that? At one time I jumped into the cesspool of Facebook groups, which is the worst thing for me to do. And somebody was like, what's up with Beaver Builder? They haven't done anything and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, oh, suddenly a business that's been in business for over a decade, serving their customers happy, healthily, and without chasing the buzzwords is a bad thing. And people just like laugh emojis on it. It's just like, why do I even show up here? Because this crowd just wants free, fast, and $29 lifetime plans, right? There's nothing wrong with building a sustainable, profitable company that isn't super sexy and isn't just dominant all the time. In my opinion, both from like a product perspective and from, a personal perspective. Like I love to lose because I learned that lesson. I love to win, of course, but I don't mind living in that moment. And when I'm winning, I already know there's going to be a downturn. Now, this is obviously because I grew up a lot in sales, and the deal's never done until the client signs and everyone says yes until the terms come in front of them. But
money hits the bank.
Yeah, so it's like I don't think we always have to win. And I, Matt said something too, and I think you just reiterated it. Like, what would it look like if we just spent a year frozen fixing stuff? You're going to have the people who are like, you're going to lose ground to all these other people. Yeah, well, sometimes you need to stop and do a spring cleaning.
I don't know how many people would actually say that.
I think a lot of people would freak out about like no features for a year. Look how they freak out about no features now.
What are the features? I don't think maybe we're I know we're very connected, but I think we're talking to slightly different crowds because I get way.
I know a lot of people in the community. I know the most amount of people in the community.
Yes, you do. What I hear more of is more the fixing side. Like they've created problems, obviously, and again, we're leaving out a large portion of this that goes kind of without said of like the amount of technical debt that you rack up when you do all this type of thing. So we talked about that kind of before, but that I hear more from that angle rather than like, oh, why don't they have this, this, and this? Like, yeah, for sure, like, mobile responsiveness or whatever. Like, but I feel like at least people I talk to, it's more of like, I don't like what has been done so far. So if we could fix that, I feel like they would be happy about that. Surely everybody wants everything to be perfect and done as fast as possible and new stuff. I get that, but that's not realistic. One other point I want to make is that you said, first thing, are you saying that we're in the stage of WordPress where hard times create strong men?
Yeah.
Or are you saying that we haven't gotten there yet?
No,
Are
I
you s-
think
are-
I think we've been in it. I think we've loosely been in it. I don't think you're going to see like again, I don't think you'll ever see WordPress crash and burn. I think if there were ever like a 5-year downturn, it would be slow. It wouldn't be off a cliff.
Yeah, I don't see that as being possible either. And I'm not sure many people are actually saying that or suggesting that. I think it's more of just like they see that the growth rate is not a growth rate really anymore. They just see
Mhm.
that it's a plateau, or they see that it's maybe a slight decline, or like certain stats are indicating that. Again, we're
Sure.
not the only people talking about that.
And in 5 years, you could have the upturn could be 10x because all of these people who left WordPress to go to these other platforms will come back to WordPress. Because here's the equation, in my opinion, and I'd love to hear from folks listening to this. Webflow, let's say Squarespace, Wix, Webflow, Shopify. What props this up? What props those product companies up? What holds them up? Customers, people giving them money, right? That is what keeps them going. So there's always that struggle of marketing dollars, product dollars, taking from one platform and getting them onboarding them. Maybe they go, one Squarespace guy goes to Wix, goes to Shopify. The only thing that props those companies up is dollars and money and users and customers. In the WordPress world, it's open source. So WordPress is propped up, just like Josepha said in that clip, is by the people. We need people to be using it and people to be interested in it, because if they're not, there's no WordPress. People keep WordPress propped up. Dollars keep Squarespace, Wix, Shopify, and Webflow propped up. Because as soon as the dollars dry out, those companies will fall off a cliff. Dollars can dry out in WordPress, and you won't see an off the cliff. You might see a gradual decline, but it won't be off the cliff. Those other will go out of business. There's no going out of business in open source WordPress.
I mean, I'm not going to act like I know exactly how everything works here, but like just trying to, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I definitely agree with the fact that like the other side is like dollars, 100% agree. But I think, is the term reductive, is it too reductive to say that WordPress is just people? Because if there was no money, there would also be no people. Like there would be like in the current state of like how the world works. Like this is a big conversation around the contributing thing for either if you're sponsored or if you're just doing free contribution or whatever. Like, and we've had this conversation before, but it gets very nuanced there. I feel like, are you like, I think what I think you're saying is, yes, at the core of it, if there's no people, because it's open source, there's no people are propping it up. I get that. But is that actually the full story? Meaning like the contributors that are contributing, a lot of them are getting paid by either Automatic or a
Sure.
GoDaddy or whatever. And if WordPress, again, we're playing hypotheticals here, but if WordPress went on a strict downturn and like it got actually bleak, it's nowhere near that, nor do I really think it's going to get there. But like it's only not going to get there if we recognize that these things are possible. We can't like think anything is infallible. That is literally how you go extinct, regardless of what you are. But if WordPress did look very bleak, don't you think like a GoDaddy, I'm making names up here, but like, don't you think like a GoDaddy or somebody would be like, we're gonna, like they might reconsider, because what they're doing is they are literally paying people to go work to some degree on it, or maybe they would pull back or something like that.
But yeah,
But what I'm saying is that's ultimately, it goes back to the money. It's people for sure, but it goes back to the money. Now you may have a situation where somebody's like, okay, well, I want to turn WordPress around. I'm just going to volunteer more, or I'm going to whatever. I'm like, you take the money out of it somehow. I just don't know how that's like
I think it's the
actual reality.
The economics of a project being propped up by people versus money is the Webflow. Like again, well, Squarespace, any of these, Squarespace, Shopify is a better example. Shopify, because it's the most expensive. Although Webflow is pretty up there for e-commerce. Or no, Webflow is a good example because Webflow is probably the one that you do have to worry the most about this because long term, 100% long term.
Not right now.
Not right now, but long term. Shopify will probably win because of all the investment money that it already has and the brand equity that it owns throughout people's, cognitive level of understanding. Like if I want e-commerce, I'm generally looking at Shopify. But Webflow would be one where suddenly, just like we see with freaking inflation and streaming services going up, and YouTube Premium was once $12 and now it's $22 or whatever. So I'm just like, how? Why?
I'm on the family plan.
Yeah. I'm just like, I don't even understand how you're charging me more, because the way I see it as a tech person, bandwidth costs are going down, but then people are saying, well, energy costs are going up. So there's like all of those economics impact those companies where if bandwidth and storage and energy and payroll and taxes and operating in different global governments and environments and tax regulation, all that stuff is what impacts these companies like a Webflow and investors, right? And investors, like, give me a return on this investment, or we're not giving you more money for the runway you need to hire more people, to do more marketing, to do more advertising. All of those economics are straightforward impacting these companies: Webflow, Wix, Squarespace, Shopify. And in the WordPress side, while yes, you make the argument of like, don't a lot of people get paid? Yes, but this is that tug of war of open source where WordPress is open source. So it's not like GoDaddy has to pay a WordPress license. As long as anyone can use it. They don't have to give back to WordPress if they don't want to, but they choose to because they realize it makes all of WordPress better, which does improve their position. But they don't have to. Hosts out there that do nothing for WordPress and still sell, air quotes, WordPress hosting. And that is a massive, lead flow for them, is give me that WordPress site for $5 a month. And they happily say yes, and they don't give back. So yeah, these other companies are tied to that economic success for them. Whereas WordPress, it's not like that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I get what you're saying. I'm just not fully, I guess I just don't fully, it hasn't fully clicked with me yet, because I still feel like GoDaddy is a for-profit corporation, and pretty much everything that they do is, I would have to assume, we're picking on GoDaddy, but it could be anybody. I'm assuming that a company of that size cares about money, because they wouldn't be there if they didn't care about money.
Mhm.
So like, if you take that and then you say, okay, well, why are they working on WordPress? Well, it's because it makes them money. But if it stopped making them money, which you could theory craft a world where that didn't happen, because that's effectively what we're doing, then they wouldn't probably be working on it, and they would go to Statmatic or whatever, like something else. So like, in that world and in that chain of events, I just still feel like it comes back to money. I understand the nuance of this situation. It's not the same,
Right.
But in a world where you have to have money to eat and to survive, I don't know how it doesn't come back to the money. And I'm not saying I even like that. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like, I don't know how.
What would
Yeah.
really be interesting is if, just as, again, a theory crafting experiment, is if Wix said, oh, we have a licensed version of Wix now, and any web host can install it. That would really push the boundaries of how WordPress how WordPress survives from an open source perspective. Because if Wix is so great and so easy to use, and all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, like GoDaddy, you can license the Wix builder. Wow. What would happen then? And at what cost? And then it's the economics game again. At what cost does that happen? Does a Wix come in and say, hey, GoDaddy, it's $1 a website. It's $1 a website for every website you launch with the Wix builder. But then in 3 years, it's $5 a website. And in 10 years, it's $10 a website. And at what point do you go back to that same struggle of economics, where GoDaddy goes, oh, that's interesting, and they buy in just like any other, like we all did with streaming services, Netflix, $10 a month, and everyone's like, okay, yes, give it to me. And now you're $30 a month for 4K streaming, and you're wondering what the hell happened. So that would be an amazing thing to see. There's no other piece of software that challenges WordPress at that level. Drupal, kinda, but no other web host is installing a WordPress rival, an open source WordPress rival. None. There isn't any. It's not easy.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist.
It's definitely not easy. Yeah.
I want to talk about the marketing before we wrap up and just get your thoughts. I hope we would have talked a lot more about marketing through this episode, but one of the things that came out of it was, hey, maybe we should be marketing WordPress better. Maybe there should be a consortium of folks that, put money in a pool and advertise or sponsor WordPress. I've seen stuff like that failed miserably. As somebody who grew up in the car industry, my family owned car dealerships. And that was the thing that regionally, how General Motors dealerships used to advertise is you'd have like this percentage pool. And as a smaller dealership in a smaller market against like Boston dealerships, like there was an imbalance. We would put all this money in, but then all the advertising was spent in a much more expensive market in Boston. Of course, this was many, many years ago. But it was the same kind of thing. You'd have like 15, 20 dealers in a room putting in this money and only 2 or 3 of them really getting the benefit of a co-marketing budget like this. And we'd be yelling at, or not me, my father, would be yelling at General Motors going, this isn't working. How are you going to back some of this expenses too? Which is what we kind of do with like Automattic and WordCamps. So I've seen that, really, fail miserably. From a more biased standpoint as a content creator, I got my hands in the air if you're just listening. We've been here all along. We've been here all along, asking for support and sponsorship dollars for marketing your WordPress products. Whether that's through blog posts, newsletter sponsors, videos, like maybe the question is, should the content creators come together and form a coalition of here's all the stuff we offer, finally work together instead of competitively and say, hey, WordPress product companies, we've been here for a while, support us and we can get this message out instead of, coming up with your own ad dollars and figuring out like who's going to spend what, what are your thoughts on the marketing stuff from like a coalition standpoint?
WPCCA, WordPress Content Creators Association. Sounds pretty good.
Oh, you're one of those guys.
Sounds pretty good. I mean, obviously you have way more experience with this than I do, but we've talked a lot and it's something that I'm trying to definitely focus on more of because, I mean, again, I go back to the other thing. I try to be like straight up and logical about it. Like you cannot do the level of stuff. Like creating content is hard, no matter what people think about it or whatever. Like you have to be there. If you're doing live streams, there's that. It's easier if you're good at it or if it comes naturally to you. And I understand as a, maybe as WordPress or Automattic or definitely as like a third party, these guys and gals like out here, they're really good like developers. They're really good at like understanding and solving problems. It is very difficult to do marketing as well for your product. So, if we're talking third party or even just in core, I get it. Like it's completely different skill set than a lot of other things, just as like programming would be or whatever. So, but I think that I'm hopeful with things like the YouTuber group that Ann has put together there that like, I think it's a sign that there is a little bit more of understanding, like we talked about earlier in the episode here about like what is happening, why this is important, why content creators and like the people in this space, even like media in general, like all of that is important. Putting Jamie at the head of WordPress, we will see how that goes ultimately. But I think that at least on the surface, definitely I'll give it in some ways the benefit of the doubt fully there that like Jamie is a content guy, 100% about that. Like he said it yesterday on the WP Tonic, like he thinks about that all the time. So I do think that mindset is 100% necessary if you want to grow, as a platform, right? Like WordPress as a platform, like that definitely needs to happen. We could talk about the nuances of everything there, obviously, as it relates to the open source and community and everything. But that aside, if we're just talking about marketing, I do think that that's necessary. That said, though, I also think there's another angle where you definitely can't just have like a central, like this would kind of go against that whole idea of almost like, obviously WordPress isn't necessarily like decentralized sort of in the definition of that term, but like you can't just have it all coming from one place, so to speak. But there's another angle of it. I know I'm contradicting here a little bit, where like, okay, we need to have like a unrelenting, whatever, like solid, transparent message for everything like that. I 100% agree with that. But are you gonna get a cohesive message together? Like,
Yeah.
is that possible? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it is possible. And that's why I feel that WordPress as a whole, because of its nature, and it's not like a corporation, it's not a product, I don't know if you can really have one specific angle that you attack from, because it literally is different for everyone. It means something different for everyone that builds it, which is one of its greatest strengths and potentially greatest weaknesses from a traditional marketing perspective. And yeah, I don't really have too many answers here. I just think that maybe one thing could be like a blend of voices coming from the core of it. That's like, oh, you can use it like this, this, and this. But at the same time, I go back to it, and I'm contradicting myself again, that I don't think that's what WordPress.org actually, that I don't think that's the philosophy of WordPress.org. And I said this the other day when I was watching Kevin's stream on it, and I was thinking about it, I was like, at a certain point, if this is what the philosophy of WordPress.org is, you kind of just need to either accept it or try to influence the change, which we're kind of doing that sort of, maybe, I don't know. But I know there's a lot of stuff there, but it's not an easy answer. Like, there's no way to easily answer this stuff. And if you're going to market something, you need to have what you're going to market and the messaging. But if you can't fully refine that messaging, how do you market it?
Yeah.
So it's not an easy situation.
Have I ever shared the what would you do with the keys to the kingdom blog post? No,
I've only heard you say that like 15 times.
On a more serious note, like I believe Miriam is calling for a sort of not unofficial, official sort of chat around Contributor Day on the marketing for the marketing stuff coming up at WordCamp US. Here's the only thing that I would say is it cannot be, and probably technically cannot be, but emotionally it cannot be, my own opinion, and I think technically cannot be part of the Make marketing team, because I think the Make marketing team is officially just frozen. We'll get more insights to that from Josepha at the MediaCore meeting in a couple weeks. But technically, like, I don't think we can officially corral around having another Make marketing team. I don't think it will be supported by Josepha and company, because they're trying the MediaCore experiment right now. So I would urge us not to do that or try for that again, because what we're going to run into is the same exact limitations and frustrations with the marketing team for many years. No access, no data. You don't work directly with a product team. Like, some of the best marketing teams work directly with the product teams of a company. How can you not work with a product team hand in hand on a successful marketing team, knowing what's coming, knowing how the users want to use it, working with users, working with brand messaging, working with data? That is the basis of a great marketing company, or a great marketing team, I should say. And we're just going to fall victim to that again if we try to make the official Make marketing team again. Having said that, what can and should be done with this coalition is to get boots on the ground for exactly what you were saying, and build up their own set of data, which I know is extremely difficult, but this is why this is extremely difficult, is boots on the ground for all those avatars that use WordPress. Okay. So I don't know, theoretically, let's say it's Elementor, it's Gravity Forms, it's Barn2 plugins with their e-commerce plugins, whatever. There's another company in there, an agency. So you have these four like types of people. You have people who are page builder users, you have people who are form users, you have people who are e-commerce users. In this coalition, the dollars should be spent either with WordPress media companies or boots on the ground, getting those stories from the actual users so that you can identify how these people use WordPress. Because you're absolutely right. You can't just have one marketing message for WordPress, because it's fucking a million different things to a million different people. So you got to build the marketing stories for the bloggers, for the e-commerce people, for the web page builder people, for the form builders, like how these different people implement this software. That's where the time should be spent. And then bubble that up into your little tactical advertisements that way. Because if you're trying to do it the make way, it's just, I think it would be destined to fail again for all the same reasons we've already seen it fail. And if it's just like, how do we promote WordPress at large? That's also destined to fail because there's just so many different ways that people can use WordPress. And inevitably you're going to alienate somebody's message, whether it's the product company who's putting money into this marketing machine for you. And they go, hey man, I'm a page builder. You're not even you're not making any page builder ads. They're going to freak out about that. And you're going to forget the end user, who is the page builder user who's going, you keep telling me I can sell stuff on this WordPress website. I don't care. I just want to build my website, So that's
Yeah,
what I
I
have to say
think
about that.
just one more thought on that. I think that I am optimistic, like overall in general. I think there's a lot of really good things obviously still going and all the other stuff we talked about. Specifically on that point though, I would say that I'm optimistic, but I'm super skeptical just from what I've heard, like specifically recently, just because I don't have long-term experience to this, but like I'm not convinced right now that, the people that could make that call, so to speak, actually want that to be the outward perspective of what WordPress is. Like I can't fully wrap my head around that yet. Like I don't believe it. Like I don't believe that, like page builders need to shine, like maybe e-commerce to an extent with like WooCommerce, but I just don't know if that's, I hope differently because that is this huge strength of WordPress, but I'm not sure, like, and you can tell me, has that ever been at the forefront of like, I'll make up a scenario. Matt Mullenweg is like speaking or whatever. And has he ever said, I'm sure he said, oh, we got like millions of plugins and shit like that or whatever. But has he ever said like, go use a page builder to build your website or like go use something else? Like I feel like it's never, the third party is mentioned. I could be completely wrong, but has the third party ecosystem, which is the vast majority of those avatars that you're talking about in some ways, like is that ever brought up to that extent? Or is it always just like core, Gutenberg, very extensible, which are all good points, but they just don't, when you're talking about like an actual market strategy for those different avatars, it's not going to hit everyone exactly just with those points. Maybe that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And that's why I say it can't be done. So that's a perfect reason why it can't be done through the official make channels, right? So if anyone's, I guess this is just my opinion, but if folks are thinking, oh, we'll make a new make marketing team, technically and emotionally, I don't think it's going to happen. It shouldn't happen because you're going to run into these same things. No, it's never been done before. Again, because marketing and the WordPress stuff hasn't really ever been able to get off the ground. I mean, they just sat on the runway for years. I pulled up WordPress.com site because, again, I look for these canaries in the coal mine of how we get these indicators. I know we want to talk to people all the time. I, have built a career on theory crafting this stuff. And they've actually updated the WordPress.com site because I often look at the WordPress.com site to see what their marketing message is because, there is no official marketing team. And if one is to guess what Automattic is thinking about marketing WordPress, well, you look at WordPress.com and how they're positioning WordPress. I used to really poke fun at WordPress.com homepage because I'll have to go to the archive. I probably should do that. So I'm not doing like a Joe Rogan and just saying shit and it's not real. But it used to just say something like WordPress your way and maybe kind of close to this, like WordPress without limits. That still means that the user landing here knows what WordPress is, right? Like but like if somebody's like, I want to build a website, you say, go to WordPress.com and you go, okay, they go to WordPress.com and go WordPress without limits, but I want to build a bakery website, right? That doesn't speak to, let's take a look at Wix.com. Create a website without limits.
No way.
That's hilarious.
Who was there first? I'm going to have to assume Wix was.
Oh man, what an amazing thing that we just discovered live, even though we're just recording.
Amazing.
So WordPress without limits.
We should
create a
check
website
Squarespace
without
too.
links.
They all
This is
sit without
100%.
links.
Yeah. I mean,
I will
squarespace.com,
cry. I will cry. Okay.
designed to sell.
That's
okay.
so weird.
Right. Which is going, that's Squarespace
they're
saying
going after Shopify.
they're going after Shopify. They're going after the customer that's going to have the most value, right? They're not saying, I don't care about these people who want to build a stupid website. I want a customer who's going to sell stuff because that's going to be my best customer. And then Shopify, oops,
That's amazing.
making commerce better for everyone.
Wow.
You know, and this is the thing, like, so right here, and any marketer worth their salt knows this. Shopify, humans doing things right here. When you look at Squarespace and Wix ads, it's humans doing something. It's never about, hey, look at this cool tool of dragging and dropping stuff. It's humans doing stuff with our software that with the end result, right? I'm building my business. Here's stories about my business. This is that human factor that I'm urging this future coalition to go after.
Are you saying though that the coalition is outside? It's a completely external thing because
it has to be.
I think that it does solve certain problems, but obviously, if we're talking money, if we go back to the money thing, like, is that something that like Automattic would be interested in, like sponsoring external? I don't know how that structure actually ever works, or is that something that like again, we've had recent live streams, like where is there a budget for that, or is that going to end up being like it makes money for itself somehow?
Well,
hypothetically.
Yeah. Number one, this is just like an idea that Miriam came up with, or Miriam and the group came up with on that phone call. Who knows if this is actually going to come to fruition? And if it is, it's going to take, months, if not almost a year. This is why I think the creators should come up with something more concrete to offer, because it does get like really murky this way, where if you have Elementor putting in $5,000 and somebody coming in putting in $500, like whose message dominates that? Where I think if like 3 or 4 creators came together and said, hey, look, we get this great idea for a series, and everybody puts in XYZ amount of dollars, and it's all just presented by Elementor, Barn2 plugins, Gravity Forms. It's just way cleaner, I think, of a deal to do it that way than a consortium trying to like figure out where to spend ad revenue. But anyway, the point is like just a little germ of an idea right now. And I think if it is to expand, it should live outside of the Make WordPress marketing team, because technically I don't think it's available. And 2, I think you'll just run up into the same limitations if it's part of the open source initiative. Many people aren't going to like that for those reasons, but I think that's the only way it's going to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested in talking about more of that, but we can kind of wrap up. My 2 questions would be, how does it look like actually, I want to say like entity wise, but like, what would that be? Like, it's a totally different thing. I mean, I was kidding about the players association type thing, but that kind of actually seems somewhat synonymous to an extent. But, but the other thing is like, well, what do you message? Like there's got to still be a message there, because that's this problem we're trying to solve.
Yeah.
So like, is it just like WordPress is great? Like, because
well, that's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like it has to be boots on the ground, building a strategy for the different avatars of WordPress user, which there might be like, I don't know, maybe 6 to a dozen.
Yeah.
Big ways.
It could be for everyone. Like WordPress is for everyone. Like, well, there's definitely ways to poke holes in that. You could say that, but you can't stop there. Like you have to like say WordPress for everyone, and then like have, like you said, like multiple different avatars that you could immediately say, basically pick one of these that defines you, and we'll tell you exactly how you would, not exactly how you would run WordPress, but like how people like you would use WordPress.
Yeah.
That's got to be how it is. And I'm not sure why that's not happened. It's probably got to be just because it's more of like a laissez-faire, like we're not going to dive into this at all and tell you guys what to do. Like this is what it is. Like just it's really great. Just trust us. Go in there and just fuck around.
Yeah, but where do you put? So that's the thing. So where do you put that messaging? So I have a video coming out that Brian Cords and I recorded yesterday, which you should really enjoy. we broke out a whole bunch. So this video will be live. Our video that we're recording right now will be live before the Brian episode. So here's all the topics we covered: open source, GPL, WordPress beginnings, evolution, Matt Mullenweg, automatic products, WordPress.com, WP Cloud, Jetpack, Akismet, Gravatar, WordPress.org, Openverse, 5 for the Future, Audrey Capital, WP Tavern, Jose de Champo C, WordPress Foundation, WordCamps and Meetups, core contributors, GitHub versus SVN versus Make versus Slack, Woo Themes, and WooCommerce. We went through every single one of those and broke it out as far as we understand it. And we still didn't touch on a lot of different areas for WordPress. But we broke down like everything we knew about those different things. And when you look at WordPress.org, you're like, once we started breaking it apart, there's a shit ton of stuff on WordPress.org. Tons of stuff. Tons. I mean, Openverse, 5 for the Future, all this stuff. Your profiles, your forums, the photo directory. There's just like so much stuff on that site. So if you have a marketing team, where's the centralized messaging that goes out for a open source contributing marketing team? There isn't one, right? Which is the challenge. And if there is, if you say it's the homepage of WordPress.org, well, that is running up a hill, because you now have to ask the powers that be to make those changes. And that is a very sensitive page for the overall project. So is Matt going to just say yes to a bunch of volunteers that go, hey, got some great ideas for our homepage now? Probably not. I don't blame him either. So where do you put out that centralized messaging? One idea. So, and look, when you start bringing groups of people in and you start talking about money, it's going to freaking make this thing go so slow. Because everyone's going to want to say, rightfully so, everyone's going to need to, read the room, figure out who's going to get what out of this deal. How much is this going to cost? Who's going to wrangle the money? How are we going to account for it? One of the easiest things that people can do is come up with this solidified message, like you're saying. Like, maybe we can speak to why WordPress is great at the start, and we adopt that into your 5 for the things that already exist. Like when I evaluate a problem, what structures already exist that we can leverage now? Are they useful? Yes or no? And then if yes, let's use the stuff we already have in place, so we're not creating a whole new wheel like a marketing coalition. So you could say, you know what? There's a new thing we're coming up with for 5 for the Future. Everybody writes a blog post about why WordPress is great or what WordPress means to me. So does everyone buy into this? How many of you out there buy into this? 20 of you? 2 of you? 100 of you? If so, one day out of the month, you all write a blog post about why WordPress is great. That's how we're giving back to the marketing wheel without money and without muddying the waters. And it lives inside 5 for the Future, a structure that already exists. Next month, write a blog post about why WordPress is great for e-commerce. And we're all just pledging to amplifying and making WordPress thrive. That's what I got.
Interesting. I mean, it's an idea. I don't know.
Look, if there's no money in this, I don't want to hear it.
Well, honestly, I mean, I was kind of going that route, but like, I mean, I don't know who we have to run this. What we would have to run that by?
Nothing for the 5 for the Future. That's the great thing. So there's no. It's just a call to action and say who wants to do it. Everybody pledge your time this month, and then okay, maybe it takes somebody like you and me to just from a promotional purpose, like, okay, on this, we're tracking all these blog posts. Here's all the cool people who contributed to this idea. Maybe that's something that we can do.
I mean, I don't know. Haven't really thought about it. Just heard it, but I would question, like,
not everything has to result in profit, Mark.
No, that's not it. You just gotta make money somehow. I mean, because you have to live, because you can't do everything for free. So like, but regardless of the money thing, that's one concern. How does that tangibly move the needle?
Well, you have a lot more, again, you have to remember, this is not, you could also make the case if all of a sudden 5 companies came together, raised $100,000 and put $100,000 out into advertising and content, right? Like how does that move the needle? I think that because this is a lower barrier to entry. Like we're just asking everyone this month for the part of your 5 for the Future of Marketing WordPress to write about your, the first time you ever use WordPress. I'm just using that as a topic idea, but hey, everyone that's involved with this to amp WordPress, write about your first time experiencing WordPress. And they get like 20 different stories out there. Just 20 more chances of impact. Next month, let's talk about why WordPress is great for the e-commerce. Everybody writes one plugin, like minimally. Like we're just minimally just setting the bar to say, just at least do this. Like if we want to improve marketing before we get to consortiums and who's got the money and who gets what, let's just start with that, man. Let's get this message out there and just see how that goes and see how many people are actually bought into this. If it amplifies, it amplifies. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's just an easier takeoff, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I personally would be much more willing to make a video than write.
Well, whatever. I mean, yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. That's an idea. I'd love to get other opinions on that. So if you guys are listening, you let me know. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll workshop that. We'll think. Maybe we'll run that off the flagpole to something. I don't know.
He's Mark Zemansky. You can find him at markzemansky.co, mjs.bio. He's got a bunch of websites launching. He's got a YouTube channel. His #1 course is 100% free. If you want to learn about dynamic WordPress data, right? You go to Mark's YouTube channel. Again, you can find the links at mjs.bio. We're always asking for money here at the WP Minute. If you want to support us and sponsor the work that we do, talking about WordPress, head on over to thewpminute.com/support. You can join the Slack channel where there's a whole bunch of people, just over 100, who talk about WordPress news and headlines. You can join for as little as $5. $5. Like you just spent an hour with us. If you said, boy, that was pretty good. I think they're doing some good stuff. It's worth a coffee, if that, in this day and age. Here's $5. You get to join the Slack channel. I'd really love if you join for $79 a year to really show your vote of confidence and the value you get from the WP Minute. Head on over to thewpminute.com/support. See you in the next episode.
My man.
You'll eventually see us in the next episode as soon as I find the end recording button, which is right here.